afternoon, everyone, and welcome to DogCatFox and Friend, the show where every Saturday I go over stuff with my friend, DogCatFox. Oh, wait, I'm the friend. Sorry, DogCatFox and me, the friend. Wowie, wow, wow. That's right. DogCatFox is here with me and all of you as we go through some news stories of the week. Or of the last week and a half, depending on how old the story is, because sometimes I don't get a chance to talk about a thing until the Saturday after the thing that happened. But anyway, who is joining me on this beautiful Saturday afternoon? The Alexander, good afternoon. Advocatus Diaboli, hello. Walter Tomaszewski, hello. Scribe and chat. My cat Philip has taught himself how to sneak chips and crisps out of the snack bags by Daddy's feet. Well, that is a clever kitty. What about the other cat? Jealousy? Any? Okay. Shady Grin. Good afternoon. Keeverdam, hello, and thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for providing the links to our friends Twisted Skipster and Angela Arriaga. Guys, at the top of the chat box, there are GoFundMes up there for Twisted Skipster, who's trying to raise money for his daughter's wrestling club, and then Angela Arriaga is trying to set up a home business and needs some help in getting all the particulars squared away for that. So please take a look at those when you have the opportunity. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share those out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you ahead of time for that. And thank you, Keeferdam, as always, for providing the links. Derek LaRue, good afternoon. Leave some points for the rest of us advocates. Yes, oh yeah, guys, I keep forgetting because I don't know why. There's the leaderboard. Oh my gosh, the XP leaderboard for interactions and contributions to the chat. At present, we have Advocatus Diaboli in number 1 with 150 XP. We have JB in second place with 100 XP, and Keeverdam in third place with 75 XP. If you'd like a little crown by your name, well, you have to interact and stuff. Whatever that means. Old Guy Gamer, good afternoon. Afternoon Scribe, did the camera cooperate with you this time? Well, I haven't had a chance to try my camera out since we interacted on Twitter. I only take pictures when I have either a semi-finished painting project or a finished painting project, and the little skeleton warrior thing was the only thing I finished today. So, and this tablet, every time I try to turn it on, it decides whether it's going to let me log in after 30 seconds of waiting or 30 minutes of waiting. I don't know. It's a goofy tablet, so I only use it when I have to. But the next time that I take pictures with it, I will attempt the auto zoom turn off tip that you provided and see if that makes my pictures any clearer. So we shall see. JB, good afternoon, giving the Konami code, I guess, for reasons. I wonder, did it unlock something for you in real life? Let me know. Mike Savage, Blarg. Funtime Bats over on the X machine. Yes, everybody, I am simulcasting over on X. So if you happen to have an X account and see the stream over on X, please do share it out, retweet it, whatever they call it these days. Appreciate that. Mike R, hello. JPS, good afternoon. Juliet, hello. Green Death, hello. Angelverse, good afternoon. Who else is here? Simon Willikins, hello. Blitz Zero, hello. Holy Cats, Derek LaRue. Thank you, Derek LaRue, as always. It's very generous of you. Appreciate it very much. Hope you're having a good day and hope you enjoy the stream. Let's see how much XP that got Derek LaRue. None, as far as I can tell. See, I hope it's not a pay-to-win thing. They told me, or YouTube said in their little newsletter to me, that Super Chats somehow also gained you XP. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's just bragging rights. I wish I could attach something to it. Maybe they'll add that later if they have memberships or something. Like if you get up in first place in the chat, you get a crown and I don't know, a sparkly DogCatFox or something. I don't know. I don't even have those so far, so time will tell. The Dead Man, good afternoon. And Officer Buck Tud Russell, hello to you. And anybody I missed, anybody lurking, anybody in the future, good afternoon. All right, let's get into it. We have some stories. You know, they tried once again to invade my space. The Japanese. Yeah, I know. They have a habit of doing this. I'm having one of my remaining pure cane sugar Dr. Peppers as I speak to you today. Yummy. So what happened? Well, Resilience, a lander built by Japan-based company iSpace, attempted That's the operative word here, attempted to touch down on the moon around 3:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but the mission failed to land safely, iSpace officials confirmed hours later. The exact reason for the mission's failure are currently unclear. However, iSpace leaders said the lander has likely crashed into the lunar surface. This was the second attempt at a soft landing by iSpace, which is headquartered in Tokyo. Resilience was one of several robotic landers developed by companies and governments across the world as part of a renewed race to explore the lunar surface. Earlier this year, two NASA-backed Texas-based companies, Firefly and Intuitive Machines, each made moon landing attempts. Firefly's was the first fully successful effort by a commercial outfit, while Intuitive Machines' lander tipped on its side. NASA was not directly backing this attempt, but iSpace is working with the U.S. Space Agency on a future lunar mission. Those are the main bullet points. After second failed landing attempt, here's what's next for iSpace. iSpace has gone out of its way to make clear that they're not giving up. The motto underpinning today's mission was, quote, "Never quit the lunar quest," unquote. And by all accounts, the company has every intention of sticking with these moon missions until they succeed. Try again. You'll just have to contend with DogCatFox coming after your lander. Wowie, wow, wow. Yes, DogCatFox takes his security guard duties very seriously up here. So, not only do you have to make it all the way to the moon, you have to get by DogCatFox. Firefly, credit where credit's due. They avoided the security net up here on the moon, where I live, with my genetically engineered companion. During a news conference hours after the landing attempt, iSpace CEO Takeshi Hakamada compared iSpace to SpaceX. Well, I think iSpace has kind of exceeded. I don't think SpaceX has put a lander on the moon yet, so at least the attempt is more so than SpaceX has done. Quote, "SpaceX has also failed several times." Have they? I must have blanked out the times that SpaceX tried a moon landing, or, yeah, okay. But now SpaceX occupies the launching market, Hakamada said. In the earliest days of the Elon Musk-run company, there were several brutal failures of the company's first rocket, the Falcon 1. Failed several times in general? Oh, okay. I thought they were talking about moon landings. Okay. It was only on the fourth try, when the company was on the brink of bankruptcy, that SpaceX successfully sent one of its launch vehicles into orbit in 2008. Before today's landing attempt, iSpace Chief Financial Officer Junpei Nozaki told CNN that the company already had the money locked down for a third try at a lunar touchdown, and that likely would not be affected by a failure during Resilience mission. The company is working with US-based company Draper, is that Don Draper, which has its roots in NASA's Apollo program on a lander called Apex 1.0. Well, you know, if it makes it to the moon, that would make an Apex legend. That was a gamer joke. That vehicle is slated to travel to the far side of the moon as soon as 2027. Until then, iSpace has its work cut out for it. Hakamada said during the news briefing he will need to work to regain the trust of investors, and the company will need to deeply investigate what went wrong on the Resilience mission to ensure similar issues don't plague Apex 1.0. Quote, "This is our second failure, and about these results we have to really take it seriously," Hakamada said in translated remarks. Well, and yes, they reiterate Resilience likely had a hard landing. It's called crashing. Yeah, I know. Hard landing, where you don't come back from, it's called a crash. Just the way it is. Let's see. Over back on the chat side. Frosted Glass, thank you so much. Is this the first official kamikaze space mission? No, it's at least the second one for iSpace. A big bada boom. Big bada boom. Let's see. Also, Bridget is here. She says they failed once before in 2023. Yep, they mentioned that too. Now, let me be serious here for a second. All sympathies to the companies that are trying to make moon landings. I don't want failures to continually happen with moon landings. I want Moonbase. I've been waiting for Moonbase since I was a child. I was told when I was a child we'd already have a Moonbase. looking back at artists' renditions of things that were supposed to have taken place in the late 70s before they basically just turned off the space race to the moon. So we are long overdue for moon base. But I mean, if these are the growing pains to get it right, to make sure that we have successful landings in the future, that it becomes never routine, but certainly much safer and more efficient, then so be it. But I want there to be successful landings. But like I say, you got to get past DogCatFox. He's like, he's like the bouncer. He's like the bouncer at the club. You just, you really got to impress him to land. Oh, Dr. Pepper. Yummy, yummy. Faustonia. Hey, Scribe. Hey, Faustonia. I was watching agenda-free TV earlier. Yes, all sympathies to anybody in the Paramount, California territory right now with all the tear gas and pepper balls and protests going on. It's like, I just as an aside, I don't have a story for this because it's happening right now, but people protesting Border Patrol and ICE coming into their communities by behaving in rampantly criminal ways that will just bring more attention to their communities by ICE and Border Patrol. I don't quite get the logic there, but there you go. Roasted Opinions, good afternoon. They need to get busy before someone uses Kerbal Space Program to plan a successful mission. If all the simulations in the world apparently aren't enough to achieve a successful moon landing. And it's like, we had kind of a hard landing. Haven't you guys figured that out yet? I mean, we were landing things on the moon relatively successfully, and especially with people in them several times back in the 1960s and early 70s. So why are unmanned probes? Why has this technology, this skill, left us as a species? Because it seems like 1 out of every 5 or 6 attempts actually succeeds. It's not a good track record. So anyway, K. Roberts. Meanwhile, physicists tried to quantize gravity. Gravity will eat your toys. The forces of the universe, well known to most physicists, still a problem to overcome. And Osand is here. If you don't use it, you lose it? Yes. That's usually how it works with vacation hours. And boy, have I learned that lesson. Anyway, moving on. What shall I do next? How about a little entertainment news? Did you guys know that there's a new Alien thing coming out soon? Actually, before I show that, I made a thing for this not too long ago. I have a habit of making things, these little meme movie posters that are just edits of existing movie posters they put out for advertisement purposes. Let's see if I can find it here. Where'd it go? There it is. Yeah, so Alien Earth is coming out soon. It is a series based on, obviously, the Alien franchise, where aliens come to Earth. But as I understand it, it is a prequel to the first Alien movie, wherein in the first Alien movie they encounter this creature for the first time, and that's part of the plot line. But this TV show is supposed to be a prequel to Alien Earth, or actually Alien itself. But I guess it's a sequel to the Prometheus stuff, or I don't know. All I know is that as soon as I found out it fits somewhere in the timeline that doesn't make any sense, and they put out a poster, I had to edit their poster. I won't say what's on the screen for the sake of this being a family show, but yeah, it's one of those things where I'm kind of like, I've been through this a few times before between Star Wars and peripherally friends of mine, Doctor Who, and Vampire the Masquerade long before that. Don't mess with canon. If you want to make something, set it in the future, after the established events. Stop going backwards. Stop. I mean, admittedly, I wasn't all that jazzed about the prequels for Star Wars when they first came out. I thought, maybe we should just move on. But they didn't do that, so you take what you can get. But otherwise, learn your lessons from doing prequels to things and answering questions or inserting storylines where they don't need to be. You'd think the whole Solo a Star Wars story would have taught them that, but apparently not. Anyway, so aside from that, let's look at the actual story I meant to bring up here. When Ridley Scott says, "I've done enough with Alien," he thought, that's the end of the that's the end of the franchise. After bad sequels, this series should be as important as Star Wars. It was, Ridley. It was. And then you decided to do Prometheus and Covenant and completely screw around with things that were unnecessary to screw around with. I mean, I think the mainline Alien franchise should have stopped at 3. I think Alien 3 was a good stopping spot. I actually like Alien 3, especially on reflection next to the other sequels they put out there. The Alien vs. Predator movies were absolute terabad. And I don't know that the upcoming Alien vs. Predator or new Predator movie franchise thing is going to do any much more for the lore as we've already established. I think it reaches its point, reaches its terminus, and you just need to let it go, but they can't let it go because they don't have any new ideas. It's like, well, we got a franchise that people liked in the past, so let's mess around with it and try to jazz it up a bit. Or Ridley decides that he's going to make his Prometheus swan song or something. Anyway, Ridley Scott said interview with Screen Rant. Ridley Scott said interview with Screen Rant. Do you mean in an interview with Screen Rant? What? How long has this story been up? Since June 4th. It's been 3 or 4 days now. Okay, you haven't edited. Okay, Ridley Scott said interview with Screen Rant that, quote, "I've done enough when it comes to the Alien franchise, boy have you," which he started 46 years ago. Scott produced last year's well-reviewed Alien Romulus movie, well-reviewed by people that, again, don't care about canon or ultimate storytelling and character development. And he's an executive producer on Noah Hawley's upcoming FX series Alien Earth. But it appears Scott's days of directing alien projects is over. Again, given his most recent efforts, and Napoleon, and Gladiator 2, and Prometheus, and he should have stopped about 20 years ago. But it appears Scott's days, as he summed up, quote, "Where it's going now, I think I've done enough, and I just hope it goes further." Yeah, Scott said that the Alien franchise is, quote, "spreading like wildfire." Is it? Which he's more or less amazed considering there was a time when he thought the series was as good as dead. Sometimes dead is better. Scott directed 1979's Alien before handing the franchise to James Cameron for 1986's Aliens. The series then took stumbles with divisive entries from the likes of David Fincher, Alien 3, and Jean-Pierre Jeunet, Alien Resurrection. Yeah, well, Alien 3 is Citizen Kane compared to Alien Resurrection or any of the others. Should have stopped at 3, or at least Ripley's story should have stopped at 3. If you want to go on from that and try to add some new lore and stuff. They really should have been mining the Dark Horse comics. There were some great storylines in the Dark Horse comics that would have made great little movies for the Alien chronology. I'm thinking specifically of Alien Rogue. If you can find it. I don't even know if it's available anymore. There might be a trade paperback. But if you can find Alien Rogue, the Dark Horse comic series from the 90s now? Boy, I feel old. That was a great storyline. And you could easily turn that into a movie that has all of the claustrophobia you could ask for and sci-fi, but it's, again, relatively low stakes and fairly isolated. It was a great story. Quote, "I think I felt it was deadened after 4, Scott said. I will agree with that. Ripley's story should have ended at 3. The whole thing should have definitely ended at 4. I think mine was pretty damn good. And I think Jim's was good, and I have to say the rest were not very good. And I thought, fuck. That's the end of a franchise which should be as important as bloody Star Trek or Star Wars, which I think is phenomenal. At least I think the first one by George is seminal. It was as seminal as 2001. To me, it was that important in terms of film language and where you go next. Well, here's the thing, and here's the problem that you had with Aliens as a franchise. You didn't do a lot in the way of scope. Every movie was an isolated event. And while there were hints and drips and drabs of there being a larger universe out there, everything was kind of all brought down isolation terms, right? You needed to expand out. You needed to, spread your wings a little bit narratively, but you kept being brought back to Ripley having to be involved. Now, with things like Romulus and Earth, at least you're kind of doing that. The problem is that Romulus was attempting to fix all of the narrative loopholes that years of bad movies had created. And now Alien Earth is being set as a prequel to the original film, which screws everything up anyway. You need to move further. You need to move onward from it. Romulus, I guess, was the first attempt at that, and maybe the new Predator thing will be as well, but anyway. Scott was offered Alien a year after Star Wars, although as he has explained, quote, I was the fifth fucking choice. Why'd you offer Robert Altman Alien? God only knows. Altman said, are you kidding? I'm not going to do this. And I went, are you kidding? I have to do this because it borders and verges on heavy metal. So that's where I went, and then it died. Well, didn't you produce or have a hand in all of this to begin with? Quote, a number of years after I said, I'm going to resurrect this, and wrote Prometheus from scratch. Yeah, I could tell. A blank sheet of paper. Damon Lindelof and I sat, then hammered out Prometheus, Scott said of reviving the franchise in 2012 after a 15-year hiatus. Yeah, and how'd that go? It was very present and very welcome. The audience really wanted more. I said, it needs to fly. No one was coming for it. And I went once again and made Alien Covenant, and it worked too. Did it? Where it's going now, I think I've done enough, and I just hope it goes further. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not as much of an ardent recent Alien fan as some people. Prometheus landed with a thud for me. Covenant didn't help anything. They needed to just keep moving forward in the timeline, and they needed to drop the Ripley storyline at 3, but they just couldn't help themselves. And then they did Alien vs. Predator, which was garbage. Most of this stuff had already been written and storyboarded for them by Dark Horse by that point, and they just ignored it. Next up for the Alien franchise is the debut of Alien Earth on August 12th, and an undated film sequel to Alien Romulus that will likely feature the return of director Fede Alvarez. Great! Will we have some more awkward callbacks like, get your hands off her, you bitch? That makes absolutely no sense to be said by a character in that movie when nobody that knew that happened in the other movie is still alive. And, or bad CGI of, I forget his name all of a sudden. Not Bishop. The android from the first movie, whose name I suddenly forget. Somebody in the chat's going to remind me and I'll feel like an idiot. Anyway. I mean, if you want to bring back Lance Hendrickson's voice in some way, I don't mind. He's got a great voice. But I think we're done. I think you guys have run it into the ground. And I don't think what I've seen so far of the Alien Earth trailer, where they just introduce brand new aliens like little squid monsters and things to try to extend out the lore or add some more elements. It's like, well, I mean, the franchise is called Alien. It's not called Xenomorph. That's what I thought of when I saw that trailer. If you haven't seen the trailer yet and you're an Alien fan, take a look. They introduced some new kinds of aliens. They may or may not be related to the Xenomorphs. I'm assuming they're kissing cousins or something. But I just thought, that seems cheap. I don't know. Let's see. Walter Tomaszewski talking about the Vietnam War. The cost of the Vietnam War was added to the debt the U.S. was looking at during the time of the moon landings. The cost of that war and those landings determined the discontinuation of the landings. I can believe it. I know. We still should have gone forward. Running up debt is what this country is good for. We should have run it up and get our moon base. We should have had our moon base back in the early 80s. Dang it. Let's see. Advocates Diaboli. Star Trek and Star Wars are equally as dead as the Alien franchise. Yeah, now, in the one case now that Disney owns them, just like Disney owns the Alien franchise. This is why, even though I've heard that the people who have been handed the Alien franchise are fans of the originals and not some kind of like DEI hires, I don't know. The stuff I've seen so far, I'm like, I don't know, guys. I mean, part of me feels sorry for the person who had to make Romulus and try to take all of this new, disconnected nonsense lore that Ridley Scott injected with Prometheus and Covenant, as well as all the other nonsense in some of the sequels, and try to make it all fit into one box. I get why they were doing it. I think it was a fool's errand. But, and I hope for the best. I hope for the best they can find some new spot where they can just start fresh and make it good again. But Disney owns Fox. And Disney has a habit lately of destroying franchises that I loved growing up. So not a lot of hope there, unfortunately. Some ammunition. Wait till Benicio del Toro shows up as the Collector for a surprise Marvel crossover. Yeah. How quickly can we bring this over into the MCU proper? Yeah. How many Easter eggs would there be? Well, I mean, we already had an Easter egg in the new Predator series where one of the skulls on the wall looks suspiciously like one of the aliens from Independence Day. Could just be an Easter egg for the sake of being an Easter egg. But somebody went to the time and effort of making that thing as a prop and putting it on the wall and showing it intentionally. So I gotta wonder. Blakester, thank you. The synthetic humanoid in Alien is named Ash. That's right, Ash. I kept forgetting the name. Bishop is so much more stand out to me. Bishop. Anyway. So yeah, there you go, guys. Alien franchise, a little entertainment news. Maybe we'll be talking about that Monday on Midnight's Edge in the morning. But moving on, this story is a little stale, just a smidge, because I think it came up like last week, and I was out of town last week, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, I don't think. So, yeah, do you remember that judge? Remember that judge that helped facilitate the escape of an illegal alien from her courtroom while ICE was outside waiting to take this guy into custody after he was done with his court hearing? Yeah, judge charged with obstructing ICE says SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, presidential immunity ruling for Trump, quote, did the same for judicial immunity and bars prosecution. I don't know if you guys saw this, but apparently now the judicial branch of this country, and not like the federal judicial, just any judge anywhere, now has immunity from prosecution. You get that? If you happen to have the title judge, you share the same powers as the executive branch writ large. I did not know. I love learning new things. A state judge in Wisconsin accused of impeding government agents during an immigration bust is seeking to have federal obstruction charges against her thrown out, arguing that much in the way that the president is immune from prosecution for official acts while in office, she is the beneficiary of broad judicial immunity. So smuggling this guy out the back door to avoid federal authorities, it was an official act, was it? Well, if I can call anything I do an official act and get away with it, boy, I need to become a judge. Milwaukee County Judge Hannah C. Dugan was indicted last month after she allegedly helped an undocumented immigrant evade federal officers shortly after he appeared in her courtroom in connection with a domestic abuse case. Much of Dugan's argument for dismissal hinges on the U.S. Supreme Court last year granting presidents, let's remind ourselves of that word, presidents, So unless Hannah Dugan has now appointed herself a co-president of the United States, I'm not quite sure how this is meant to work. Presidents' far-reaching immunity from criminal prosecution. Quote, at least as to presidents, even acts at the outer perimeter of his official responsibility are entitled at least to a presumption of immunity, a 37-page motion to dismiss filed Thursday in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Wisconsin states. Quote, nothing in Trump, i.e. the case the Supreme Court was reviewing, suggests that judicial immunity is any less broad than presidential immunity for purposes here, unquote. Now, I'm happy to be corrected. Admittedly, I did not read the entirety of the court's decision in this case. But I would say that nothing in Trump suggests that judicial immunity exists as relates to presidential immunity. Attorneys representing her in the matter wasted no time in promptly painting a portentous picture, ooh, I love the alliteration, good job, Law and Crime, about the circumstances and implications surrounding the judge's arrest. Really? What are the implications of a judge committing an act of aiding and abetting a wanted criminal and facilitating their escape from federal authorities? Quote, this is an extraordinary prosecution, no it isn't, that poses a threat to federalism, no it doesn't, and judicial independence, it certainly does not. In practical terms of American governmental design, consider starkly what it proposes, the motion opens, okay? I will consider starkly what it proposes, that even judges are not above the law. Is that it? Quote, one morning, plainclothes federal agents with badges and baseball caps on a bench outside a state courtroom decided how they wanted a judge to control that courtroom and the people in and near it. For not doing as they wish, the judge faces federal criminal charges, unquote. They were waiting outside until the guy's hearing was done in front of the judge. And once he was done there, they were going to take him into custody. People being taken into custody in courthouses for additional crimes or reasons is not a rare event. I don't know if you know this, attorney. Well, actually, you probably do, attorneys for the judge, but you're just BSing because this is BS. According to Dugan, the concept of judicial immunity is rooted in the 10th Amendment, the allocation of power retained by the states and denied the federal government, and dates back more than 400 years in common law. Okay, so show me where judges are allowed immunity from prosecution for aiding and abetting a criminal outside of their judicial responsibility. She wasn't acting on behalf of that guy during the course of a court proceeding. She was exiting him after it had concluded, intentionally helping him evade authorities. So I'm not quite sure how that passes muster. The Trump administration is endeavoring to upend such a foundational principles of law through her prosecution when such principles have long stood as bars to prosecution in cases such as this, Dugan argues. You know, I think if by the end of this, Dugan, well, whether she's prosecuted or not, or successfully convicted of anything, I think she should lose her judgeship, perhaps be disbarred, because I don't think this is competent legal analysis, especially by someone who's supposedly there to adjudicate the law. Quote, dismissal here flows from a straightforward application of long-settled law, the motion states. Quote, the indictment itself is an ugly innovation. Its dismissal will not be. Okay, well, admittedly, this is an article edited by someone else. I haven't yet read what the argument is that judges enjoy the same presidential immunity that the Supreme Court intended for the executive branch. And you can argue about the appropriateness of the Supreme Court's decision in granting such immunity to the president. That's perfectly fine, but I'm still waiting for the quotation from the Supreme Court's decision that says that judicial officers enjoy the same immunity. The judge then digs into U.S. Supreme Court's landmark ruling in Trump v. United States, okay, where the justices controversially held that a sitting president enjoys, quote, absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority, unquote. Okay. That decision repeatedly cited to and relied on the reasoning in Pearson v. Ray, a 1967 case reiterating immunity for judges for acts committed within their judicial discretion, quote, even when the judge is accused of acting maliciously and corruptly, unquote. How is helping an illegal immigrant sought by federal authorities to escape their custody within their judicial discretion? I mean, if she had done something on the bench in the course of a hearing, maybe, but this wasn't that. She got down off the bench, she guided this guy and his lawyer out the back door. This was not part of a judicial hearing. This was not part of her regular duties as a judge on the bench. She was doing this in order to thwart the federal authorities out of some ideological nonsense. Best of luck with that one. Quote, if the Pearson holding suggested presidential immunity to criminal liability, it expressly did the same for judicial immunity, Dugan asserts. If it expressly did the same for judicial immunity, I think the Supreme Court would have said so in its decision. Did they say so in their decision? The filing argues that Pearson, Trump, and similar cases have all, quote, recognized that common law had not distinguished between absolute judicial immunity from civil and criminal liability related to official acts. You keep coming back to that official acts part. What part of her smuggling a wanted criminal out of a courthouse to avoid federal officials was an official act in and of itself? How did that fall within her responsibilities or jurisdiction as a judge? Quote, Trump did nothing to upend this deeply rooted judicial immunity from criminal liability. Rather, it clarified that the president is entitled to the same immunity from prosecution for official conduct. Official conduct that judges have long held, the motion states, citations removed. Quote, in short, only conduct plainly well outside the scope of a judge's job, yes, and official acts, yes, has no immunity at all. Well, I think you just said it. What she did is conduct plainly outside the scope of her job. Last I knew, a judge's job is not to offer, tours of the courthouse that just happen to be convenient enough to go out the back door for wanted criminals. And here's the thing, she interacted with the federal officials before she smuggled the guy out of the courthouse. If this was part of her official duties, if this was part of regular standard procedure for a judge, then it would have happened in the absence of her reading the riot act to the federal officers before going back in the courthouse and helping him escape. Today, then, an American judge has immunity from prosecution for official acts, except for acts that violate basic constitutional liberties of an individual. This is some interesting legal alchemy we're seeing put in place here. I'll be curious to see how this hashes out. Dugan, who is also accused of falsely telling agents that they needed to obtain a federal warrant, a judicial warrant to take Flores Ruiz into custody. They don't. Has pleaded not guilty to the charges she faces, which include obstructing or impeding a proceeding before a department or agency of the United States and concealing an individual to prevent his discovery and arrest. Each charge carries a maximum penalty of 6 years in prison and up to $350,000 in fines if convicted on both counts. ICE officials, immigration officials, they do not require a warrant to arrest a suspected illegal immigrant. Quite specifically, they don't require a warrant. So again, between her argument for her own defense and her demonstrated lack of knowledge of the law, I'm not sure that Judge Dugan should still be a judge after all of this, but that's just my opinion. Oh, what's yours? Advocast Abilene, what she did is no different than a judge showing up at a DUI arrest and preventing the cops from arresting you. Not a part of her job. Wait. Are you accusing me of DUI? What are you talking about? I don't even own a car. Arresting me. Puffer P smiles. Good to see you, Scribe. What wishes? Well, good wishes to you, Puffer. Puff the Magic Dragon. Hope you're having a good day. K. Roberts, even if she issued a warrant for the alien first, she cannot act on the warrant. Well, no, the question, her accusation is that the federal officers did not have a warrant to arrest him at that time. But when it comes to immigration, as at last I looked, and I looked this up a long time ago for a different video, so as far as I understand it, if immigration officials have reason to believe, a reasonable suspicion, let's say, that a suspected illegal immigrant may flee the area or otherwise, they do not require a warrant to arrest somebody. And because this, there was a lot made about, in Trump's first administration, about stories and instances where federal immigration officials had staked themselves out outside of courthouses, outside of libraries, these places that traditionally, not by law, but traditionally, you stay away from as a federal officer. It was a policy and so on. It wasn't a regulation. And there was these protesters who were saying, you don't have a warrant to do this. They don't need a warrant to do that. It's one of the weird sort of loopholes for immigration authorities that they enjoy that a lot of law enforcement don't. So, yeah. Now, again, that was my understanding. If I'm completely off on that, by all means, correct me. Advocate Stapley, judges do have some immunity, but disregarding federal law and authorities is not within it. Yeah, you see, the immunity part of it, I kind of see when it, like if I think about like a police officer, right? There's a certain amount of latitude granted to police officers versus your average citizen. That in the course of their duties, if something goes wrong, there is more legal protection, let's say, for a police officer that might do something that would get someone else in legal trouble, but in the course of their official duties, if it's collateral to what they're doing and so on, there may be a financial settlement or something, but a police officer facing criminal charges for something that takes place in the course of their official duties doesn't happen very often unless it's something that's absolutely egregious. So I could see a judge having some immunity from prosecution for something they say or do or elsewise from the judge's bench. Maybe they'll be censured, maybe they'll be fined, but actually facing a crime the same way that a non-judge would. Yeah. But exactly. But that does not extend to things like aiding and abetting and obstructing justice in a situation that has nothing to do with your judicial office or anything. So, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It's not going to, well, let me put it this way. I hope it does not fly, because that would be a crazy precedent to set. Because at that point, then, any judge could do anything and just say, oh, well, it was within my judicial official acts, officer. I mean, my blood alcohol content is 0.10 because I was testing the limits of police response time for such calls within the purview of my judgeship in applying the law. You can't arrest me. Something like that, I could see that happening. Let's see, Walter Thomas Gessie. If ICE do not need a warrant, what stops them from arresting illegal immigrants or citizens? Well, this is the, again, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a smart thing to do, but yeah, that does allow for the possibility of mistaken arrest, mistaken identity, and so on. So someone could be arrested who is not an illegal immigrant, and the threshold of being able to justify that action is kind of abstract. I mean, presumably they have to have at least an articulable suspicion that the person that they are targeting for arrest is an illegal immigrant. But, I mean, mistakes have been made before. So, Yeah, like I say, I don't know how they would fix that at this point. And of course, if the law is so bad, you know, Biden, Obama, all these other administrations, they've had the opportunity to change the law. You know, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing necessarily. You know, there could be a lot of pitfalls there, pitfalls that could impede someone else's civil rights and so on. But if it was that big a deal, there's been plenty of opportunities to change it. So as far as I understand it, a immigration official does not need a warrant to make an arrest of a suspected illegal immigrant on sacred ground like a courthouse or a school or a library or something like that. Out of respect, they usually don't invade churches. That's the one thing that you probably won't see. If someone is seeking sanctuary in a church or a mosque or something, more likely than not, the ICE officials are not going to be kicking down the doors of a church to grab somebody, warrant or otherwise. But a courthouse, again, people get arrested at courthouses all the time. It's not some kind of weird thing to happen. Anyway, so there's that story. Moving on. Speaking of the Supreme Court, now this kind of falls into DEI territory, but I wanted to talk about it today and save some space on the next DEI Death Watch. But this does have implications for DEI. We'll talk about that as we go. U.S. Supreme Court reverses decision to rule on class action question. The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday sidestepped resolving a major issue across class action litigation, turning aside an appeal that could have made it harder for plaintiffs' lawyers to bring together groups of people to sue companies and others for alleged wrongdoing. The justice's order said the court had improvidently agreed in January to hear an appeal by diagnostics tester lab... Wait a second. This is not the story that I wanted. What? No, I didn't want class action. Wait a second. I wanted the reverse discrimination case. What's this? What? Hold on a second. I wanted the reverse discrimination case, not the class action case. How the heck did I mess that up? I apologize. Let's try that again. What? I must have clicked on the wrong thing when I grabbed that link. Let's try... Will CBS let me read it? I think so. I apologize. I had thought that something else was happening there. Live TV, everybody. What can I tell you? Let's try this one again. Supreme Court sides with Ohio woman in reverse discrimination case. There we go. The Supreme Court on Thursday revived a lawsuit from an Ohio woman who claimed that she was the victim of reverse discrimination, or as we like to call it, discrimination, because her employer denied her a promotion because she is straight. In a unanimous decision. Now, I want to, and it's underlined here, but I also want to underline it rhetorically. Unanimous decision. Even Sotomayor. Even Justice Jackson. Unanimous. Now, for those of you, I think we did it on... I don't know if I did it on a stream. It might have been on the Discord server. We listened to the oral arguments about this case. And there was a point at which where Justice Roberts is talking to the courtroom as they're debating the fact that there is or there was now, a higher threshold of proof that was necessary for anyone from a majority demographic to make a discrimination case. And the lawyers for and the lawyers against in the case, and all the justices on the bench, they all kind of looked at each other and said, I think we all agree that that is unfair, isn't it? And they were like, yeah. And it was so, and there was laughter going on. It's like, well, you've never heard something so unanimous at one time on the oral arguments amongst all the judges and the attorneys for both sides. It was quite something. In a unanimous decision in the case of Ames v. Ohio, go away, pop-up, of Ohio Department of Youth Services, the High Court tossed out a ruling by a federal appeals court that dismissed Marlene Ames's claim because she failed to clear a higher bar applied to members of a majority they say group, it should be demographic, in order for her employment discrimination case to proceed. The justices concluded that a, quote, background circumstances, unquote, requirement cannot be squared with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act and sent Ames's case back to the lower courts for further proceedings. So basically, no one has to have a higher threshold of proof based on their race or their gender. It's either you have evidence or you don't. It's not, well, you have evidence and you have to have extra evidence, which has been the standard for a long time, apparently, which is just BS, but thankfully it's been done away with. The background circumstances rule required plaintiffs who are members of a majority group to put forth more evidence showing that their employer is unusual because it discriminates against the majority. Ames had argued that the requirement unfairly imposed a higher burden on her as a heterosexual woman. The ruling from the Supreme Court makes it easier to pursue claims of reverse discrimination. Get rid of that phrase. Just stop it. Reverse discrimination in 20 states and the District of Columbia that are covered by federal courts of appeal that still applied the standard. Okay, now, here's the implication for DEI cases. One of the things that has held up DEI cases are things like this, because DEI, more often than not, discriminates against straight people, white people, and often males in their hiring and promotion decisions. And since straight white males, both individually and as a combined, factors, make up or are part of quote-unquote majority populations, well, then their burden for making a discrimination case against their employer is more difficult than someone else. Now that this threshold has been lowered down to an even playing field, it is more possible that individual and class action lawsuits against employers for discrimination based on DEI policies and practices can happen. So it doesn't guarantee they will, but it definitely makes it easier in the long run. So I'm curious to find out how it goes in the future. Writing for the court, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson said that the Supreme Court's case law, quote, makes clear that the standard for proving disparate treatment under Title VII does not vary based on whether or not the plaintiff is a member of a majority group. Yeah, no kidding. Title VII doesn't say, thou shalt not discriminate on the basis of race unless the individual is part of the majority demographic. I don't know why there was ever a standard that applied it elsewise, but now it's gone. So between this and the elimination of affirmative action, things are becoming more fair, thankfully. The background circumstances rule flouts that basic principle. You ain't kidding. Jackson noted that the requirement uniformly subjects all majority group plaintiffs to the, quote, same highly specific evidentiary standard in every case. Yeah, it's almost like the standard is itself discriminatory on the basis of elements that have nothing to do with the nature or the quality of your individual case. It's like, well, you're white, so you don't have the same evidence standard as this other person. I'm baffled that standard lasted as long as it has. Ames sued her employer, the Ohio Department of Youth Services, after she said she was turned down for a promotion in favor of a gay woman and then demoted and replaced by a gay man. She alleged violations of Title VII, which prohibits discrimination in the workplace based on race, religion, national origin, and sex, which includes sexual orientation. It's been extended to, I think they should probably just make that more explicit, but whatever. Ames accused the department of discriminating against her on the basis of sexual orientation. A federal district court ruled for the Ohio Department of Youth Services after finding that it offered, quote, legitimate, non-discriminatory business reasons, unquote, for passing Ames over for the promotion. The court concluded that Ames's allegations were insufficient to establish the background circumstances necessary to make an initial case of reverse discrimination. Now, here's the thing. Ames could still lose her case. Okay, the Supreme Court's decision does not say Ames wins her case. It just says that the standard of evidence required of Ames as compared to any other plaintiff who was not in a majority group cannot hold. It has to be the same standard. So if the court was rejecting her case based on these background circumstances, those cannot apply. You have to apply it evenly to everybody, regardless of what demographic they fall into. Now, so again, Ames's evidence might still not be enough to meet even the regular threshold for someone who was not in a majority population. But at least at this point, presumably, procedurally, she'll be given a fair shake. A plaintiff can clear that bar if they put forward evidence that a member of the relevant minority group made the employment decision at issue, or by presenting statistical evidence demonstrating a pattern of discrimination by the employer against members of a majority group, or just of a group. The majority part of this now is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether a majority demographic or a minority demographic. It's just about that demographic. You know, the Supreme Court just made that ruling, and you're still using the same language that created that differential in the first place. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit upheld the district court's decision and agreed that Ames failed to satisfy the background circumstances requirement. Ames appealed to the Supreme Court, which agreed in October to review the Sixth Circuit's decision. That appeals court and 4 others, the 7th, 8th, 10th, and D.C. circuits, still applied the background circumstances standard, while 7 others do not. In a concurring opinion, Justice Clarence Thomas, joined by Justice Neil Gorsuch, criticized the background circumstances rule as judge-made and said it is undoubtedly contrary to Title VII and likely violates the Constitution. Yeah. Quote, courts with this rule have enshrined into Title VII's anti-discrimination law an explicitly race-based preference. White plaintiffs must prove the existence of background circumstances, while non-white plaintiffs need not do so, Thomas wrote. He said that the Supreme Court's decision, quote, obviates the need for courts to engage in the sordid business of dividing people by race or other protected traits. The dispute arrived before the High Court as President Trump targeted diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI programs and practices throughout the federal government and fired federal employees in DEI roles. Large companies, too, dismantled their DEI policies. Some have doubled down on them, following the Supreme Court 2023's decision that ended affirmative action in college admissions because of the implications for Title VI and companies that have federal contracts, as well as the implications for Title VII, since the argument for diversity is now no longer a dodge for discriminating on the basis of race or any other element under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But, you know, I may have talked about those things in the past just a little bit, and it's possible I may talk about them again in the near future, but I won't bore you with all those details again. Until the next time. Advocates Diaboli, people are so good at discrimination, we discriminate about what we call discrimination. Scarblay, yeah, I know. You have a mechanism within civil rights law to address discrimination that it itself discriminates. Again, how that lasted as long as it has is just, it baffles me. But then, the same, like I say, the same logic baffles me as to how affirmative action has lasted as long as it has. So things are being cleaned up. Day late, dollar short as far as I'm concerned, but things are being cleaned up bit by bit. And again, this was unanimous. There was no split decision on this. And if you were there with me when we listened to the oral arguments on this case, you heard the moment at which everybody in the courtroom said, yeah, that really is unfair. And people were like nervous laughter erupted because everybody's like, yeah, that is kind of bad, isn't it? So there you go. That was good. That was good. But let's see, what else do I have? I've got one more. Okay, now I saved this one for last because this is a story that it upsets me for many reasons. There's the obvious reasons, and then there's the could this have been prevented reasons, the procedural reasons. So, you may have heard about a story out of Washington State regarding 3 little girls and their still, as far as I know, missing father. Their father took custody of them. Somehow, we'll talk about that in a moment. They went missing. All 3 girls were found dead. Their father, the presumed suspect in their deaths, is currently on the run in the woods somewhere, hidden somewhere in the state of Washington. I hope he is captured. But if it turns out that he decided to exit of his own volition in misery and cowardice, I'm not going to miss him, but I'd rather see him face justice. Anyway, one of the things that I don't quite understand was the unwillingness of the authorities in Washington state to issue an Amber Alert when it was reported that these 3 girls had gone missing and were in the quote-unquote custody of their mentally ill and dangerous father. Now, obviously, we cannot know and we will never know, and it might have been completely irrelevant that issuing an Amber Alert would have changed anything. The same result may have happened regardless. But the fact that one wasn't baffles me. So, not knowing all the details off the top of my head, we're going to read this story from the Oregonian about why case of missing Wenatchee girls didn't trigger Amber Alert. Tell me why. The disappearance last week of 3 young sisters who were found dead Monday, and their father failed to return after their father failed to return them to their mother. And again, why was he allowed custody of them in the first place, has raised questions about why Washington authorities didn't issue an Amber Alert. Their father, 32-year-old Travis Decker, is suspected of kidnapping and asphyxiating the girls, ages 5, 8, and 9, near a campground 40 miles north of Wenatchee. He is still at large, at least as of the time of the publication of this article and of this broadcast. On the night the girls were reported missing, Wenatchee police said they contacted Washington State Patrol to request an Amber Alert. Okay, so the police contacted the State Patrol and said, we want an Amber Alert for these 3 girls who are in the custody of their father who kidnapped them. However, Washington State Patrol authorities denied the request, saying it did not meet the strict criteria of the program. And okay, so here are the bullet points. Here's all the things you have to checkbox before you can issue an Amber Alert. In Washington State, at least. Number 1, the persons must be 17 years old or younger. Okay, they were. 2, the incident must be investigated by a law enforcement agency, and the subject must be entered into the National Crime Information Center. Well, I'm going to assume that the Wenatchee police are a law enforcement agency and that if they were following procedure, they would have entered it. But I'm making that assumption. So, okay, let's say 2 checkboxes. There must be enough descriptive information that activating the alert will assist in the recovery. Well, they knew who the girls were. They knew their names. They probably knew what the guy's car was. I'm going to assume that they can check that box. Okay. There must be reason to believe the person has been abducted. Okay, well, 3 girls that were supposed to be brought back to their mother weren't. So, And lastly, the missing person must be known to be in danger of imminent serious bodily injury or death. Known to be an imminent serious... Okay, tell me how you're supposed to divine that necessarily. In this case, the father had legal custody of the girls, and this is the part that I don't understand. Why was this guy granted legal custody of these girls when he had been diagnosed with PTSD and had known emotional and mental illness problems? I read that in another story. This wasn't like, oh, we just suddenly found this out. That part I'm still not quite sure I get. The father had legal custody of the girls. That doesn't mean you can't kidnap somebody, and authorities could not automatically presume he had abducted them. Additionally, law enforcement did not have a clear indication the children were in imminent danger, according to Washington State Patrol spokesperson Chris Loftus. Washington State Patrol instead issued an endangered missing person alert on Saturday. The bodies of the 3 girls were recovered Monday when police found Decker's unoccupied 2017 GMC Sierra pickup near the Rock Island campground outside Leavenworth. The girls' bodies were found down a small embankment 75 to 100 yards from the truck, along with plastic bags and zip ties, court documents say. A GoFundMe fundraiser has collected $500,000 for the mother of the 3 girls. Okay, well, I guess we know now they were in imminent danger. I guess we can check that box off. Again, it's obviously no guarantee that issuing an Amber Alert would have changed anything. But some of this, at least this last one here, that last one here seems like it requires a threshold of psychic powers I'm not sure anybody can possess. Must be known to be in danger of imminent serious bodily injury or death. Must be known. Okay. Anyway, that just... Advocate Stably, no, having legal custody does mean you haven't kidnapped them until you keep them beyond the time you should have, which apparently he had, so I guess, I don't know. Does that threshold need to be changed necessarily? I don't know. Old Guy Gamer, wow, twice. 2 towns in Washington pronounced correctly. Good job, Scribe. Oh, did I? Did I say, Wenatchee and did I say Leavenworth? Leavenworth? Like leaving the bread, that kind of thing? Or was it Rock Island? I can say Rock Island. Let's see. Some ammunition. Oh, you're talking to somebody else. Let's see. Kidnapping is a legal term that has nuances. I understand that. I mean, it says abducted, but, you know. I don't know. Well, let me ask them. What would have been the harm if an Amber Alert had been issued? You know, I mean, like I say, I don't have any guarantee, and I don't necessarily have a belief that issuing an Amber Alert would have changed anything. But if not all of these, if those last couple of ones, like, well, did he really kidnap them or otherwise, if they issued an Amber Alert and it turned out to be nothing or a misunderstanding, what was the harm in doing that? What damage is caused in a case of overcaution? I mean, it's not like an Amber Alert suddenly, unless I'm missing something, an Amber Alert does not suddenly grant the police authorities they wouldn't otherwise have in investigating something like this, correct? So what would have been the problem with issuing an Amber Alert just in the sense of being overly cautious? Kieverdam, thank you so much. He may be hiding in the wilderness since he apparently has or had outdoor survival skills. Yeah, as far as I understand it, he is a veteran, and he has some kind of survival training. So, yeah, he may be hiding out in the woods somewhere. He might be just rotting on a log at this point. Like I say, most of me hopes that he is captured and brought to justice. At the same time, given Washington State's track record for law enforcement these last several years, I could see him being found not guilty by reason of insanity or something. So, I don't know. The Dead Man. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. I'm not saying it's a dead franchise. It's a dead franchise. Advocatus. The problem might be if they issue one and there is no issue and someone sees them and does something to stop him and he is innocent. Well, I don't think an Amber Alert releases someone from liability for taking vigilante action or something, any more than issuing a, whatever they said it was, an endangered missing person thing. Also, let me check something here. What did they say they did instead? Right, they denied the request, right? Additionally, law does not have enough clearance. Launch with issue an endangered missing person. Well, if you know they're endangered, I mean, maybe I'm just parsing the language here a little bit. If you can say that someone's an endangered missing person, then you at least have some suspicion that they're in danger of imminent serious bodily harm, right? I don't know. It's confusing to me. Liability is usually a reason behind not doing something. I get it. Faustonia, on the stories getting old, do you think that all stories are old or just get retold? Oh, you mean like on a fundamental level and sort of like a Campbell sort of hero's journey kind of thing? Oh yeah, there are no new stories, structure-wise or elsewise, but you know, some stories do go stale after a while if new things have happened or it's been resolved. But anyway, yeah, so that just frustrates. I mean, the whole thing frustrates me because 3 innocent little girls are now dead. And other stories, I'm sure, have more details. I can't imagine that. Well, I mean, I guess I can't imagine it. Were there any warning signs here? I mean, I saw stories where they were talking about how he had known mental health issues and PTSD, had violent outbursts and such. And why was he allowed custody in the first place? Or I should say unsupervised custody. I don't get it. Either way, it doesn't really matter now because whatever warning signs there were, if there were any, they were ignored. And this is the result. And now we have 3 dead children and a nut job on the loose. So, there you go. I just find it frustrating that the mechanisms in place to assist in situations such as these were disallowed from happening. Even though it's like right there in front of you. Well, no, they're not. We don't have to issue an Amber Alert because we don't know that they're in danger, but we'll call them an endangered missing person because the threshold for that apparently is lower than children in peril, possibly. Anyway, a couple more minutes for you guys. If you have anything else to say, and then we'll wrap things up. Some ammunition. I'm not blaming the mother. I'm suggesting that the question of the mother's competence is raised in my mind if that father was able to get in custody. Well, it might not be a matter of the mother's consent. The court might have issued it. You know, some judge might have taken a look at the arguments for how to handle custody and said, yeah, no, I'll allow this. Unless it was an agreement between the parents. I mean, if the mother was fine with having shared custody unsupervised and they agreed upon it between the two of them, then that's something else. But, you know, who knows? Abdicatus, where I live, they issue Amber Alerts for just about every little thing to the point I don't even pay attention anymore. I get that, but I don't know. How do you make it important to people otherwise? You know? And I think there are other mechanisms that go into effect when an Amber Alert is issued versus a quote-unquote endangered missing person, right? Other agencies get involved, or there are other things that happen at that point. Otherwise, what's the point in having a difference between the two? I mean, if an endangered missing person is effectively just like an Amber Alert, then why have 2 different things? But somebody else said, yes, I questioned the judge in an earlier comment too. So, okay. Yeah, and I don't know if the judge was involved in the custody decision. It could have been an agreement between the parents. Who knows? And it's also possible, because we've seen this before, it's also possible that this guy just had a complete snap and did something unpredictable. Anyway, just another story, another tragedy. You know, I marinate in this stuff far too often, I think, with true crime. And that's not any shade on my true crime content friends, because that's their business. And stories like these and those that are covered by Misery Machine and Mr. Black over on One Crime Too Many, you got to highlight this stuff because these sometimes, in very stark fashion, highlight the problems in the system, especially when it comes to child and family services or the laws that are meant to protect children or prevent these kind of things. But all the same, as my dad says, a locked door only keeps out an honest man, so psychos are going to psycho, I guess. Anyway, not to leave the show on a down note, but that's the way it is this Saturday, June 7th, 2025. Next, you can find me on Midnight's Edge in the morning on Monday at 9:05 a.m. Pacific Time, noon 05 p.m. Eastern Time, unless they decide to move the show back an hour. There's a notion being put forward that Midnight's Edge in the morning will be pushed back an hour to an hour earlier than its current schedule at some point. I don't think they've made that announcement yet. It's just being mulled over right now. If that happens, it will make it more difficult for me to attend because of work stuff. The 9 a.m. thing for me hits right at the sweet spot between stuff I have to get done for my workday and stuff that I'm waiting on for my workday. That little hour, 90-minute window is kind of a LULL period for me, so it's perfect. If it's moved back an hour, I might be sunk, so we'll see. But that's neither here nor there. It's not got nothing to do with me. If it's better for the show and the channel over on Midnight's Edge, then all the best to them. But other than Monday, you'll also find me Monday at, what did I say? 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time for the next episode of DEI Death Watch, where I'll take a look at some new news regarding DEI, its demise, and its doubling down by certain entities, and we'll see what's the latest and greatest in DEI. And as always, you can find me here Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence. I'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for entertainment and information. Would you like to join the Discord server? Well, I would like you to join the Discord server. It helps if I had a pre-prepared link for the Discord server, which I didn't, but I do now because I am the peak of efficiency. In the chat right now, you find a link to the Discord server. Just click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me you're not a bot. Actually watch the stream and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is background circumstances. I know that's a phrase and not a word, but that makes it even more secret. So just say, hello, background circumstances, and I'll know that you watched the show. And of course, you can find me here again next Saturday for another episode of DogCatFox and Friend. I'm the friend, and DogCatFox is the DogCatFox. Wowie, wow, wow. Yes, that's you. I know. Stop looking at me like that. Like when you learn how to talk outside of that one Groot-like phrase you've got, then maybe you can be a co-host. But until then, you're just moral support there on the floor. Just eat your kibble. Okay. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. Lastly, over on the community leaderboard, who do we have as our top 3 for the end of the show? Advocatus Diaboli's in number 1 spot with 225 XP, tied for first place, but relegated to second place is JB at 225 XP. And number 3 with a crown, Somnamnul Nation with 150 XP, but also tied for third place. But she doesn't get a crown for some reason. Kieverdam with 150 XP. So there you go. Also, before you leave a like. I'd appreciate that. If you'd like to share this out on the Twitters or the Intertubes or the Napsters or the ICQs or the LimeWire, Friendster, AngelFire, GeoCities, Lycos, I don't know, whatever tickles your funny bone, by all means. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Hope you have a good Sunday ahead of you. Hope the next week treats you well. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.